Lincoln's remarks at Gettysburg, 272 words that redefined America. November 19, 1863. A small town in Pennsylvania. A battlefield still stained with the blood of over 50,000 casualties from 4 months earlier. Abraham Lincoln rose to dedicate a national cemetery. The main speaker, Edward Everett, had just finished a 2-hour oration. Lincoln spoke for 2 minutes. Most people thought his speech was a failure. They were wrong. Those 272 words would redefine the American Republic and alter the public purpose of the Civil War. This is the story of the Battle of Gettysburg and the speech that recognized the battlefield as sacred ground. The battle. July 3, 1863. In the summer of 1863, the Civil War had raged for over 2 years. Confederate General Robert E. Lee commanded the finest army the South could field, the Army of Northern Virginia. He had defeated Union forces repeatedly. Lee decided to boldly invade the North. A victory on Northern soil might force the Union to negotiate peace. It might bring recognition from Britain and France for the Confederate States. At minimum, it would take the war out of war-ravaged Virginia and allow Southern farms and cities a respite. In late June 1863, Lee's army of 75,000 men crossed into Pennsylvania. The invasion shocked the North. Confederate forces were within striking distance of major cities like Baltimore, Philadelphia, and Washington. The Union Army of the Potomac, 94,000 strong under General George Meade, moved to intercept Lee. The two armies collided at the small town of Gettysburg in south-central Pennsylvania, near the Maryland border on July 1st. Neither Meade nor Lee had planned to fight there. The battle began when Confederate troops searching for supplies encountered Union cavalry. A skirmish exploded into the largest battle ever fought in North America. Day 1, July 1st, 1863. Confederate forces pushed Union troops back through Gettysburg to defensive positions on Cemetery Hill and Culp's Hill south of town. The Union had lost ground, but held the high ground, a crucial advantage. As darkness fell, both armies rushed reinforcements to the field. The commanders realized this accidental collision would become a decisive battle. Day 2, July 2nd. Lee attacked both Union flanks. Confederates assaulted Little Round Top, a rocky hill on the Union left. If the Confederates took this position, they could roll up the entire Union line. Colonel Joshua Lawrence Chamberlain commanded the 20th Maine Infantry at the extreme left of the Union position. When his ammunition ran out and Confederate forces prepared another assault, Chamberlain ordered a bayonet charge down the hill. The maneuver succeeded, saving Little Round Top and possibly the entire Union army. On the Union right, Confederates attacked Cemetery Hill and Culp's Hill, but failed to break through. The second day ended with horrific casualties on both sides. The Union line held. Day 3, July 3rd. Lee made a fateful decision. He would attack the Union center with a massive frontal assault. It became known as Pickett's Charge, named after Confederate General George E. Pickett, because his division was one of the 3 that led the attack. At 1 p.m., Confederate artillery opened fire, the largest bombardment of the entire war. For nearly 2 hours, cannon fire shook the earth. Then silence. 12,000 Confederate soldiers emerged from the woods and began marching across 3/4 of a mile of open ground toward the Union center on Cemetery Ridge. Union artillery and rifle fire tore through their ranks. A few hundred Confederates reached the Union line in what became known as the high water mark of the Confederacy. They were quickly killed, captured, or driven back. Pickett's charge was a catastrophic failure. Lee lost over 6,000 men in less than an hour. The battle was over. On July 4th, Independence Day, Lee began his retreat to Virginia and would never again invade the North. Approximately 160,000 men fought in the 3-day battle. The Battle of Gettysburg resulted in over 51,000 casualties, 23,000 Union and 28,000 Confederate soldiers killed, wounded, captured, or missing. It was the bloodiest battle of the Civil War. The town of Gettysburg faced an overwhelming crisis. Thousands of dead soldiers lay in shallow graves or unburied on the battlefield. After the battle came the long, unpleasant work of burying the bodies and reclaiming the land. The wounded overwhelmed the town's capacity to care for them. Barns and houses overflowed with wounded. Unexploded shells seemed hidden everywhere in the summer grass. Dead horses covered the fields. Gettysburg smelled like death, and it would for a long time to come. Pennsylvania's Governor Andrew Curtin successfully proposed a dedicated national cemetery and arranged for Pennsylvania to fund the project to provide proper burial for the Union dead. The dedication was scheduled for November 19, 1863. The dedication of the Soldiers' National Cemetery at Gettysburg drew approximately 15,000 people. Organizers invited Edward Everett, a former senator, governor, secretary of state, president of Harvard, and the most celebrated orator in America, to deliver the main address. President Lincoln received an invitation almost as an afterthought, just 2 weeks before the ceremony, when the organizers asked him to deliver a few appropriate remarks after Everett's orations. Lincoln took the assignment seriously. He understood the moment required more than ceremony. It demanded meaning. Lincoln and the Declaration of Independence. Abraham Lincoln was a devoted student of the Declaration of Independence, had memorized much of it, and frequently referenced it in his speeches and writing. Lincoln saw the Declaration as America's founding charter, the document that established the nation's core principles. The Constitution was the legal framework, but the Declaration stated the purpose, that all men are created equal and entitled to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Lincoln revered the Declaration of Independence, stating that Thomas Jefferson introduced an abstract truth, applicable to all men and all times, into a revolutionary document that served as a rebuke and a stumbling block to tyranny and oppression. In 1863, many Americans, including the Supreme Court, viewed the Declaration as merely a historical document, announcing separation from Britain. The Constitution, they argued, was the supreme law, and the Constitution had protected slavery. Lincoln disagreed. He believed the Declaration's promise of equality was the standard by which all American law and policy should be measured. Slavery violated that standard. The Civil War was testing whether a nation conceived in liberty and dedicated to the proposition that all men are created equal could survive. This understanding shaped every word of the address Lincoln would deliver at Gettysburg. On November 19, 1863, Edward Everett spoke for 2 hours. Classical oration, filled with references to ancient Greece and detailed descriptions of the battle, was exactly what audiences of that era expected. Then Abraham Lincoln stood and spoke for approximately 2 minutes. This is what he said. 77 years ago, our fathers brought forth on this continent a new nation, conceived in liberty, and dedicated to the proposition that all men are created equal. Now we are engaged in a great civil war, testing whether that nation, or any nation so conceived and so dedicated, can long endure. We are met on a great battlefield of that war. We have come to dedicate a portion of that field as a final resting place for those who here gave their lives that that nation might live. It is altogether fitting and proper that we should do this. But, in a larger sense, we cannot dedicate, we cannot consecrate, we cannot haul low this ground. The brave men, living and dead, who struggled here, have consecrated it, far above our poor power to add or detract. The world will little note, nor long remember what we say here, but it can never forget what they did here. It is for us the living, rather, to be dedicated here to the unfinished work which they who fought here have thus far so nobly advanced. It is rather for us to be here dedicated to the great task remaining before us, that from these honored dead we take increased devotion to that cause for which they gave the last full measure of devotion, that we here highly resolve that these dead shall not have died in vain, that this nation, under God, shall have a new birth of freedom, and that government of the people, by the people, for the people, shall not perish from the earth. The meaning of Lincoln's speech. Lincoln began with a specific date. 77 years ago, 87 years before 1863. That date was 1776, the year of the Declaration of Independence, not 1789, the year the Constitution was ratified. This was deliberate. Lincoln was grounding the nation's founding in the Declaration's promise of equality, not in the Constitution's compromises with slave owners needed to form a union. He redefined the Civil War. It was not merely a war to preserve the Union. It was a test of whether a nation dedicated to the proposition that all men are created equal could survive. The war became about the survival of the Republic itself, as committed to the principle of human equality. Lincoln transformed the purpose of the soldiers' sacrifice. They had not died simply to preserve the Union as it was. They had died so the nation could have a new birth of freedom. Freedom that would fulfill the Declaration's promise of equality for all. The final phrase, government of the people, by the people, for the people, captured the essence of self-government. This was the idea being tested at Gettysburg and throughout the Civil War. The immediate reception. Some newspapers criticized it as inappropriate. The Chicago Times called it silly, flat, and dishwatery utterances. Edward Everett knew better. The next day he wrote to Lincoln, "I should be glad if I could flatter myself that I came as near to the central idea of the occasion, in 2 hours, as you did in 2 minutes." Lincoln had done what great speeches do. He had given profound meaning to terrible events and pointed the nation toward a higher purpose. The legacy. The Gettysburg Address is now recognized as one of the greatest speeches in human history. It reshaped how Americans understood their nation and its founding principles. Lincoln placed the Declaration of Independence, with its promise of equality, at the center of American identity. He argued that the Civil War was about fulfilling that promise, making real the proposition that all men are created equal. This interpretation would have profound consequences. After Lincoln's assassination, the 13th Amendment abolished slavery, the 14th Amendment guaranteed equal protection under law, and the 15th Amendment protected voting rights regardless of race. These amendments wrote Lincoln's vision into the Constitution itself. Every subsequent movement for civil rights and equality in America has returned to Lincoln's words at Gettysburg. The promise that all men are created equal, and the commitment to a new birth of freedom became the standard by which American law and society would be judged. The battlefield where 51,000 men fell became, in Lincoln's words, consecrated ground, not by ceremonies and speeches, but by the sacrifice of those who fought there. Their sacrifice, Lincoln argued, gave meaning only if the living resolved that these dead shall not have died in vain. On November 19, 1863, Abraham Lincoln stood on a battlefield in Pennsylvania and delivered 272 words that redefined American the Republic and the experiment in self-government. He recognized Gettysburg as sacred ground and instrumental in what has become known as the Second American Founding. He gave the nation a renewed purpose, a new birth of freedom and government of the people, by the people, for the people. The world, contrary to Lincoln's prediction, has neither forgotten what he said nor what those soldiers did at Gettysburg. Both changed America forever. If you found this history meaningful, please like and subscribe for more stories about the Constitution, the presidency, and the principles that shaped America.